Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Business Casual. My guest today is Selina Rentz-Weddle. She is the lead catalog manager at MANN+HUMMEL. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good. And so we actually had an article by you that was on aftermarketnews.com not too long ago, and the topic was dirty data. So we want to see if we can dig into it just a little bit more than we did already.
That is what I dream about and have nightmares all at the same time.
You live and breathe data and catalog, like making sure everything is ready for catalog. So I'm really curious how you got into that, because you said that you weren't really a technology data person until you found this role.
No, not at all. I actually did hospitality for 20 years. So I did hotel and restaurant for this completely different, but thank you, COVID threw me into aftermarket. I was the little girl that worked underneath the cars with my granddad and helped rebuild motorcycles and a VW Bug bus. Yeah, so I was always on the roller underneath the cars and picking up tools and flipping through paper catalogs. So this is full circle for me to now be a catalog coordinator at MANN+HUMMEL.
You said it was like going to your first day of college or something like that when you went to your first day of work there, right? You couldn't believe that you had entered this industry.
Yeah, I was terrified, right? Like when you walk into college, you kind of don't really know what to expect, right? Like you're ready to be on your own, but you don't know what it's going to look like. And I was terrified. Like, who are these people? I don't know anything about cars, period. Definitely didn't know anything about data. I was coming in as a temp, so I felt like I was having to like prove my place and show that I deserve to be here. And I picked up on it really quick. Like the first thing we had to do was start cleaning from a migration project. And so I got to deal with 1980 and 1990 vehicles that I knew.
So you started with something you were familiar with and built off of that. You said your interest in data started being effective when you were able to relate it back to those cars, right?
Yeah, so those were one of the first cars that I looked into was actually the 1989 Dodge Ram that my grandfather drove. And I remembered changing spark plugs on that vehicle with him. I remember changing the oil. So, you know, we deal with filters here at MANN+HUMMEL, and you relating the placement of the filter to where it goes on the engine, or you know, the air filter, and how we changed that and the components that we had to take off to be able to get to it. So it kind of made sense. It was like connecting all of the dots, and like a word puzzle, but with car parts.
So for people who aren't in the data world but are in the aftermarket world, how would you explain to them how important accurate, clean data is?
It's like going to put diesel fuel in an electric vehicle. It doesn't work. There's no space for it. There's no spout for you to put the fluid in, or vice versa. It's like pulling your Freightliner up, which now there are EVs, tractor trailers, so maybe that doesn't apply. But same scenario, you're trying to put something into a place that doesn't fit. So if you have dirty data on your vehicle, then you might have a cross information from year, make, and model. Your engine might be off. It could be from just duplications, people not doing the research, and just assuming, we all know what that word means, that these cars are going to be the same from year to year and that the fitments are going to be the same. And that's not the case. We had an issue last year where an OE changed the space, the sizing on the engine and the placement for an oil filter. It threw the entire industry into an uproar, because we have to go by OE manufacturer numbers when we're doing our aftermarket parts. And I cannot tell you how many phone calls and emails we got telling us that we were wrong. But yeah, you have to make those connections, and you have to constantly do the research to make sure that all of your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted.
So even that one small change that an OE made a huge impact in the data world for you guys, because it impacts the ability for people to find and fit the correct filters. Is that right?
Absolutely, because if you have this part historically on vehicles, right, that have fit the same engine for the last, 2 decades, or even if it's just the last few years, people are going to they're going to start to become familiar with the part number and the placement on the engine that it fits, right? The reality is, like, a lot of these engines are the same across manufacturers. It's kind of like going to Walmart and buying the Great Value brand of, it's still going to be a Nabisco product. It's just the packaging looks different. And it's the same with the OEs out there. So a lot of the engine bases are the same. They use a lot of the same parts. And when you start playing with that, and you've got people that are die-hard car, like, that's what they do, that's what they live and breathe, they're going to know in an instant. And whether it's a user error or, a fitment error, they're definitely out there.
So how would a business run smoothly with clean data versus not being able to operate very well with dirty data? So what's the opposite of the situation you're trying to avoid?
So your clean data is going to be seamless from start to finish. There's not going to be any questions in your catalog, for one, which I personally feel like is the Bible of all companies. Like, without your catalog department, your sales team doesn't know what's out there to sell to their customers. Your customers don't know what to use to put on their vehicles. Clean data is a representation of you doing all of the work start to finish. You've done your research. You've made sure that your OEMs are fitting to spec with your engine and your designation, your transmission. These have all gone back fitments with aftermarket pieces that are by dimensions, which are best. And it makes life so much better. You have less returns, your sales are boosted, you have less discrepancies coming in. You're not going back and forth with errors on your vendor sites, because we also have to load onto our customer sites. So if we're not up to standard with our data in our catalog, then that means the end user is getting that disconnected data as well.
So updated data basically means the best sales that you're going to be able to find, because people are going to be able to find you.
Absolutely. You're going to be the leader in filtration. You're going to start popping up on the Google search bar as the #1 option instead of the #5 option. Your reviews are going to be all 5s instead of 1s and 3s. And you're going to have happy customers that have clean engines after that.
I mean, that's a pretty good goal. So I am curious, from your perspective, because I know you feel very strongly about this, why should companies invest in cleaning up data and hiring people like you, who may not come in with an expertise, but come in with a passion and then can become experts in the field?
I think that's really important, especially now. I am a little bit older, so my work ethic is a lot different than what I'm seeing in the industry now. I think, one, you want someone that is full of passion with what they're doing. It's going to make them be critical on their self. So they're going to double and triple check their self before they ever turn the work into you. I think someone that has a true interest in, especially when you're dealing with automotive data, because there is so much that goes along with one vehicle. You want someone who is genuinely engaged with what they're doing, right? You don't want them to just go, okay, this engine looks good to go with this car. They mesh well together, so this is what's going in our catalog. That's where you begin to start to see some of that data drift off. I think it's very important to bring someone in who is well versed. I think someone with a mechanics background would be a great catalog addition. Definitely a general interest in cars is helpful. The data, not so much, because what I've found is it just looks intimidating. Once you get into it and realize, like Aces and Pies, the coding is all the same. The only thing that changes is whether it's Ford or Chevy or BMW, and then the part numbers, right? The coding remains exactly the same. So it's unified across the board. I think that is definitely a great place for the industry to be in.
And I think some people, when they hear acronyms like ACEs and PIEs, like you said, it immediately overwhelms you before you even start digging in because it sounds so technical. I mean, you can't even say the words. That's why there's acronyms, because that's easier. So, you know, that makes people a little hesitant.
Right. I didn't even think about that. Sorry. ACEs and PIEs, yes. Definitely a industry standard for not just automotive. I think we're actually looking at changing PIEs to size to become content instead of product involved, which makes more sense. But before the Auto Care Association came into play, there was no standard. So everybody was rogue with transferring information. And if you called me and I was at a parts counter somewhere, then I'm going to tell you the part that I was particular to. If you call back and you get Joe on the phone, Joe's going to tell you a completely different part number. So there was no standardization in the industry at all. And then the worst part of that is once you put a paper catalog into print, that's it for the next year. You can't change that. And as we all know, the data is changing on a daily basis here. So you really want to try and convert everyone over to digitalization, because then it's at your fingertips. And we really have come a long way from, you know, having flip phones and rotary phones and an actual yellow page phone book than, you know, having it in the palm of our hand now. So I think they've done a great job with unifying that information.
Absolutely. And we kind of started touching on this already, but we were going to talk about taking the jump into data. So like if I were to walk in, have a passion for cars, and sit down next to you and be trained, like what would be the first things that I would need to learn or know to even be able to get started in this field?
The first thing I would do is get you familiar with the vehicle that you drive. That is the best place for you to start, because you spend probably 70% of your time in that vehicle. That is an extension of you, and probably, if you're anything like me, half of your closet's in the back seat. So the easiest way for you to learn how this information flows is something that you're already familiar with. So like I drive a Chevy Traverse, right? So I would sit down and tell you, okay, this is the engine for my Traverse. I'm going to take you through where I do a one-on-one comparison to what's in our catalog and what ACA has in their catalog, and just walk you through, like, this is a 4-cylinder. It's a 3.5 liter. Why that makes a difference if there's a designation. I'm going to show you a bad example of where someone took half of an El Camino and put a swimming pool in the back. And there is no standard for that. And then explain to you how these one-offs happen, right? Like the 2016 Chevy Traverse is not going to have the same filters in it that the 2025 Chevy Traverse has in it, because there's been a lot of growth, huge overhaul on the engine. And you take all of those things into consideration when you're thinking about your oil filter and your air filter. And then show you how a snippet of ACEs and a snippet of PIEs and how those link together like a puzzle.
Wow.
Then it all makes sense.
So you essentially are a walking database who then helps clear up catalogs at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I try and put it in layman terms for people to understand, like, how would I explain this to my grandmother, right, to make her get it? How would I explain it to my 12-year-old niece, you know, who wants to know what I do for a living, and she thinks none of it is fun at all. So yeah, all of that makes sense. Like when you can actually turn it into, you know, her Barbies, and, you know, this Barbie came wearing a pink dress, but then you went and bought separate clothes. And so how are we going to connect this information to say, okay, on Wednesday, your Barbie's going to wear purple? Same kind of concept, just different avenues to get there.
Absolutely. A good analogy. I'm a sucker for a good analogy any day. So we do want to ask you, and actually full disclosure to everyone, we met for the first time at the Women in Auto Care conference. And you were so nice and so bubbly. And so I think I may have an idea of a couple of these answers. But your aftermarket 3, what are the 3 things that keep you in this industry and loving your job and excited?
So yeah, top one you already mentioned is women in auto care. That is a non-negotiable for me. I was not in a sorority in college, so this is my sorority. I think 2 years ago at Connect in Charlotte, in Chicago, someone said, find your tribe. I found my tribe with the women in auto care. Like this, some very, very open and welcoming women there. I've not met a stranger yet. And yeah, so that's my number one for sure. Some great ladies are in my Rolodex now that I feel like we have lifetime friendships have started. I mean, the second one's going to be relationships. So I guess it kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, outside of that, I've met some pretty amazing people just at conference, and, you know, in passing, I get to host, our filter class. So once a month we do a filter institute where we bring in sales reps and different customers and some of our vendors, and show them how filters are produced. And I get to host the catalog portion and explain why the product information is so important. And through that, I mean, there's been owners and VPs that have come through, and we get to have lunch together and tell jokes. And just the group of people is, the automotive industry is so big, but so small at the same time. It's so weird. And then finally, I think the third thing would be, I think my grandfather's legacy, the Rentz legacy. And so I think this is kind of my give back to him. You know, I'm not getting my hands greasy, but I'm getting my hands dirty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you might not be the one under the hood, but you're the one helping them immediately.
Yeah, I definitely think he's proud of what I'm doing.
Oh, that's great. Well, Selina, thank you so much for being a guest today. We really appreciate having you. I know it probably goes without being said, but you're comfortable with people reaching out to you if they have questions, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to everyone else for watching.